Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist, and I'm here with my guest. Could you go ahead and tell us your name and what kind of atheist you are?
Hi, my name is Melissa King-Jones, and I am an atheist.
Okay, and were you always an atheist, or were you raised religious?
I was raised extremely religiously. I'm from Georgia, so I was raised Southern Baptist. We're here in the Bible Belt. I always like to joke and tell people that if my mom could have had me in the church, she probably would have birthed me right there in the church. That's just how entrenched in it we were. So no, I mean, I've believed for most of my life. I didn't become an atheist or deconvert until probably about 2 years ago. And I'm 27 now, so about 25 years of Southern Baptist belief.
So, can you tell us what made you decide, or what made you come to the conclusion or realization that you were an atheist, or you didn't no longer believe in God?
I want to say that it kind of started when I was younger, where I had a little bit of cognitive dissonance, but that kind of made me want to believe a little bit harder. Probably when I was about 8, I realized that I didn't just like boys, but I liked girls too. And you just don't do that. That's not how it's supposed to be. Girls are supposed to like boys, and boys are supposed to like girls. Girls are not supposed to like girls, and boys are not supposed to like boys. That's just how I was raised. And so when I realized it, it didn't even occur to me, hey, I was probably born like this. I thought, I've got some disease or something. I mean, I'm sick. And so since I thought God is this ultimate healer, if I believe hard enough and if I pray hard enough, then all of this will just go away. And it didn't, but I still kept holding on to those beliefs because I wasn't exposed to anything else. It's all I knew. So I don't even think I knew what an atheist was. And then as I got older, I went to college. My first year of college, I was still going back home on the weekends, and I was still going to church. But then, I don't know, I think my world just opened up a little bit. I was exposed to more diversity, and I was exposed to more races and more religions and people who were atheists. And it made me start thinking about things, and I just sort of stopped going to church, and that sat well with me. I had never actually thought about not going before. And then one day, I think my mom was asking me something. I don't know if she was talking about that movie, God's Not Dead, or something like that. And she was like, oh yeah, it was really good and you should go see it. And I was like, no, I'm not really interested, and I don't think I will. And so that kind of started a little argument, and she was like, oh, you used to go to church all the time, and you don't do that anymore. What are you atheist now or something? And I was like, well, I mean, I guess if that's what you want to call it, I guess so. I mean, I no longer believe the things that I believed before. So that's kind of how it all happened.
So how did that feel when your mom asked it, and did she say more?
I think she was so shocked when I said it, because her belief, and this is a belief that she's had for pretty much her entire life, is that there is a heaven and there is a hell. And if I don't believe, I'm not going to go to heaven. And she thinks that's where she's going when she dies. And so obviously, if I'm rejecting the notion of God, then I'm not going to heaven. So we won't be together after death. And so I think it was probably actually a little devastating for her. And so I think it was just shocking, and she just kind of stopped talking, and she didn't keep pressing the matter. But for me, as soon as I said it, it was just like this huge weight was lifted off of me, or like I had shackles on me or something, and they just kind of like fell off. It was amazing.
That's wonderful. Yeah, when my mom found out, I was raised in a religious cult until 13, or somewhere around there, 12 something. Anyway, I then lived with my mom. My mom was an evangelical Pentecostal, and I mean they're assistant pastors, and my sister's a youth pastor. Her husband's a youth pastor. My cousin's a pastor. I mean, my whole family's like religious as all get out, and I was too. But when I became an atheist, I remember like you talked about talking to my mom. My mom goes, "Can I pray for you?" on the phone, and I was like, "That's okay."
Yeah.
That's all I said. It wasn't even mean or anything. That's okay. And she goes, "Are you angry at God?" I was like, "Oh, brother." Oh, brother. Yeah. I don't believe in God, so don't hate him. But if the stories about him are true, probably would hate him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that question too. I come across it too. They'll be like, "Why are you so angry at God?" And I'm like, "I'm not, because I don't even think there is a God. There's not one." So I cannot be angry at something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, so do you think that made you feel like the same thing? Like someone's accusing you of something you didn't actually do? That's kind of how I felt like, what the hell?
Yeah. Or I feel like we're villainized.
Yeah.
I mean, all the time. And I hate that because I know that I'm a good person and I know things that I stand up and fight for. And I'm like, no, I'm not a bad person, but just because I do not have the same beliefs as these people, all of a sudden, like, I have no morals, I must be a bad person. Or like here in Georgia, when you say atheist, sometimes they'll go, "Oh, so you worship Satan?" And then I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I don't worship anything. If I don't believe in God, then why would I believe in Satan? I don't know.
Well, it goes back to probably the same thinking that somehow you're angry at God. So if you
Yeah.
say there's no God, I think in their mind they can only imagine then you must be angry at God, thus you must be supporting God's enemy, I guess. It's the only thing I can think of. I mean, other than they're just uninformed. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess everything that's not God is anti-God or anti-Christ or something.
Yes, I think that's probably mostly what I come across. Yeah.
Which I think is so bizarre. I told people too. I was like, yeah, did you not get that? I don't believe in fantasy. Yeah, things that have no evidence in reality. Like, I know, since we're on the subject of the devil, here's a question I have for you. You say that God won't show himself because he wants faith. Tell me exactly why the devil doesn't show himself. I mean, you
What
can't.
response do you get?
Well, because they get dumbfounded because they never even thought of that. Like, tell me, what rational reason would the devil have to stay invisible? Since doesn't he want people supposedly to believe in him and not the God? Wouldn't it make more sense if he actually showed up? I mean, that you would then believe in the devil, whether or not you believed in the God.
Right. That makes total sense.
And then they're like, oh well he can't. Oh, he can't because why? Because he doesn't have free will from the God that gives everyone free will? You mean that God? So you mean the God that allowed him to fight him, take other angels, and then leave heaven, but yet can't show himself? Please.
Right.
But like you said, the problem is the people do not think.
Right.
They just say stuff and they don't think. Like, I remember before someone told me, well, how could you not know there's a God? Just look at a baby's smile. I'm like, that is your argument for God, a baby's smile? What in the holy hell is wrong with you? You just have no brain? A baby's smile. But it's so funny, like you said. I mean, the things that they think that it's like bizarre.
Right. And that's sort of like just recently, I had a guy on my Facebook. I mean, once I put that label on myself and sort of came out, basically, I thought, well, why should I be quiet about it anymore? I'll start posting things on Facebook and being a little more vocal about it. And just here recently, I posted something about I don't even remember what it was about, but this guy posted it and goes, well, why is it so important to you to say that you're an atheist, or why is it so important to you to be against religions? And I was like, well, you would not even ask a Christian that. You would never ask why they're being so outspoken about their beliefs. You just accept it. But then for me, like, it's like there's a double standard there. We're supposed to be quiet about it, or else we're oppressing Christians if we speak up about it.
Which is bizarre, because every religious person that says, I believe this religion, is almost by default saying, I don't believe other religions.
Right.
Same thing we're saying, we do not believe other religions, including yours.
Yeah. Yeah, but I felt really attacked, though, in that moment, because I thought, I usually just, when I see religious posts, I mean, most of my family, they're very religious, and so I'll see them post stuff on Facebook all the time. I usually just scroll past it, because it's not really bothering me. I mean, unless they come at attack on me, and they don't ever do that, but I just scroll past it. I don't comment on their stuff. And so then when I post something and someone turns around and wants to make a big deal out of it, I'm like, oh, really? Do you really want to take it there? Why am I not afforded, or why should I not be afforded the same opportunity to speak out on Facebook about my atheism, when I know for a fact you just wouldn't care if it was a Christian doing it or somebody else?
True. But the double standard is put towards us because we're actually exposing that their thing is a lie. So I get why they feel threatened. I mean, I don't know about your page, but they should feel threatened on my page, because I have a large desire as an axiological atheist to free humanity. And so I am going to go in a crusade to go after falsehood like there's no tomorrow. Okay. But I always tell people, never mistake that for not caring. I absolutely care about people. This thinking, though, that people's beliefs are people is flawed. What's so funny to me is we don't seem to have that problem of feeling that hating a thinking is a hating a person, because if you just think, how many people will say, I don't like a Democrat, or I don't like a Republican, or I don't like a libertarian, or whatever, communist. People don't have problems when it's political. I mean, you can say, I don't like this, and people aren't going to usually jump through, your skin, even if they're that people. Somehow this magic thing happens with religion and gods that an idea then becomes a person. Yeah.
And we're not supposed to say anything about it or speak out against it. And I mean, I've seen some of your other videos, and you were talking about firebrand atheism, and I feel like on the inside, that's what I am.
Yeah.
But in my profession, I sort of have to do like common ground. If I have a client who comes in and I ask them what's important in your life, and they say, well, my family's important to me, but also my personal relationship with God, it would ruin my rapport with a client if I say, you know what, just forget about the personal relationship with God because it's bullshit, and let's just focus on the family part. Well, that's something that's important to them, so I have to sort of try to find a way to put that into their treatment plan and help them with, sobriety. So I've kind of had to, I keep it to myself, especially in the professional arena, but then in my personal life, I'm like, religion can be very destructive. It can be really harmful.
So let me address that. I'm not just a firebrand atheist. I'm an axiological atheist. An axiological atheist always starts with value, and it's understanding the value of good and understanding the value of bad. And it sees humanity as a good and sees things that remove humanity or attack it as being bad, like the God concept or religions do. They actually are counterproductive to a peaceful and caring humanity. because they tell you who you can hate. They can tell you this behavior that people do among consenting adults is somehow evil. I mean, it demoralizes people. It defames. It's sexist, homophobic. I mean, the point is, as you said, I'm a firebrand atheist, but because of being an axiological atheist, I never forget the why. Why am I doing this? The why for me is very clear. It is because I care. I care for the dignity and rights of everybody. So, as you said, would I attack someone for simply believing? No. Why would I? Why would I? I respect the dignity and rights of people. That includes believing things I think are foolish. Now, so I agree. I feel this way even when I do outreach. It doesn't matter even if I'm speaking, at a place or, doing outreach at a college. It doesn't even have to be that my job. It just has to be that a personality that I hold in general. I hold in general that everyone has the right to define their beliefs and shouldn't be attacked for saying what they believe. Now, when they say that I have to believe this, as a firebrand atheist, as you said, I'm going to say, well, no, I don't. I won't usually attack people for it, but I will say, no, I don't. And they usually ask, well, why is that? Or I may offer why I don't believe, and then I'll just explain it. It's not an attack towards them. It is just simply explaining and not being shy. To me, firebrand atheism is that I know that it's normal, it's healthy, it's natural, it's whatever. So I don't need to be ashamed. I don't need to hide it. That does not mean that I go around forcing it down people's throats or something, because I believe everybody has a right. I mean, that's why I do it, is because I care about people. So I don't see any problem with staying strong to what you believe and being open to challenge when people offer you things as true. You can certainly challenge, why do you think that? But I don't go around, even like my mom, and I've had other people tell me, oh, you're so nice, Even though I believe, I never thought I was mean to people that believe. Now, I may be mean to your ideas.
And people will get that twisted a lot, and they'll say, well, why are you attacking me? Well, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking your idea, your belief system.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how it should be. And if they get offended, I just let it go. I don't.
Right.
Okay. You're offended. And they go, I have a right to be offended. I go, okay, you have a right to be offended.
Yeah.
But that offense doesn't itself have a right. In other words, humans have rights. Humans have dignity. Ideas don't have rights. They don't have dignity. Humans have a right to exist. An idea doesn't have some kind of inherent right to exist, that it somehow needs to be protected.
Right. I just got into the abortion discussion, and I had to just stop, because I was like, I can't take this guy seriously. He kept saying, I have a right to my views, and I was like, yeah, of course you do, and I'm totally respectful of that right. But what I'm doing is I'm arguing against what you're saying, not against you. I'm not arguing against your right to say those things. I'm just taking your arguments and I'm showing you that there are fallacies in them.
Oh, yeah.
So it didn't end very well, but I just let it go.
I would imagine in Georgia. I lived in Georgia too, and actually two different places in Georgia. I lived. It's right. We're just the north part of Atlanta. It's like northeast a little bit. Anyways, I can't remember. It's like Durham. I can't know what it's called now, but I forgot. And I also lived in Savannah.
Oh, okay. I love Savannah.
You live in Savannah?
No, I'm in the northeast region, but I love Savannah though.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've lived in two places in Georgia.
Yeah, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about then. It's pretty much a red state, and so, and it's in the Bible Belt, so I'm just surrounded by Christianity everywhere. The only place that I feel, I think, a little more free, I would say, is when I actually get into the Atlanta area, where there's much more diversity.
So,
like when I go for Pride and stuff.
That's cool. So, when you're up there, do you go to meetups or any atheist groups up there where you're living?
No, I'd really like to, and I'd really like to get more involved in the community. Right now with my schedule, it's crazy. Most of my stuff now, I'm just having to do online communities and online groups, which has been really great. I mean, it's really refreshing to what I'm used to. But, I mean, I would like to do that kind of stuff, and I probably could find tons of groups in the Atlanta area.
Yeah. I can help you look for ones maybe closer to your area.
Oh, okay.
But, so anyways, you said Pride. So, do you go there and support atheism, or do you just support being bisexual or pansexual?
Well, I first started going, I think last year was my first year, and that's because I finally publicly sort of came out. A couple people knew, but like my parents didn't know. And I wasn't public about it on social media or anything. And so when I came out, I was like, all right, I'm going to go do this thing. Like, I'm going to get into the parade thing and everything. To me, it just, like, for me, I think it sort of goes hand in hand. I know we were kind of talking earlier about how not all atheists are progressive and socially conscious and want, you know, rights for different groups. But for me, it definitely goes hand in hand, because before, when I was so entrenched in, you know, religion, I can look back now and go, wow, like I was so hateful to people without, you know, like being hateful, but I really was. I mean, if I'm thinking about, no, I don't want gay people to have rights, and here I am, a person who is, I mean, I'm not a heterosexual person. So I guess there's probably some self-loathing and stuff too. And now, it just like, I kind of just walk around and enjoy the environment. What I've noticed here at this Pride is there are a lot of, churches that go out there, not to protest, but to say, hey, we're welcoming, we'd like to have you in our congregation. I'm sure I saw some secular groups there, but I was very surprised with the number of religious groups that were there, just because I'm definitely not used to that. I'm used to more of the branches that are like, nope, you can't do that. I mean, you're going straight to hell.
Yeah.
So that was definitely like, oh, wow, okay, I guess there are some people out there that believe, but also are saying, you know, we're okay with who you are. And I just wasn't exposed to that growing up, so.
Yeah, I've been to Pride a couple times. I'm not bisexual or anything. I am mildly intersex and genderqueer mentally. My mind doesn't think just like a male. Probably because of being genderqueer. I mean, being intersex.
Yeah.
Anyways, but the reason I went wasn't really for myself. It's basically to support other people, to be a secular voice, and to support other people. Because to me, what I feel like is religion says people that go, not saying all of them, but a lot of them have this message like, we love you anyway, as in somehow I have to choose to love you. We know something is wrong with you, but we're going to love you anyways. I find that to be absolutely subversive, because it sounds like a nice thing, but it's actually a hidden put down. There's still something wrong with you, but we're going to go ahead and love you. It's like this one Christian tried to come up and talk to me, and I told him, see, if you ask me what do I think about, I just love them. I don't have to say anyway. Yeah. They're people.
Right.
Of course I love them. Well, of course it's natural. I don't have to think about it. I know it's natural. And what? Like, as one person who was gay asked me, because I usually go there with a bunch of atheist signs and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, what does atheists think of people who are gay?" And I said, "It's an odd question, because if I really think like a science-minded, I would ask you, more of the question should be, what do I think about heterosexuals?" And he goes, "Well," he goes, "Well, I don't understand that." I go, "That's the point. It's a weird question. What do I think about heterosexuals?" You say, "Well, everyone knows everyone's heterosexual. And everyone knows everyone's gay." So, it's an odd question, because if I understand the science, I understand it's normal, natural. I know psychology, it's been proven to be healthy. So I don't even know what you're asking me.
Right. And you said something that was it struck a nerve with me for sure, because when you said the "I love you anyway" thing,
Yeah.
I didn't give my parents the chance to say that stuff to me when I was younger, because I was lucky, I guess, in that I was still attracted to males, so I could just date males, and then I came across as being heterosexual. And then nobody ever questioned me on it. And like I said before, I was just too ashamed, and I thought there was something wrong with me, so I never wanted to tell anybody. But when I did finally come out, I came out to my mom, and I'm sobbing at the time, because there was still some part of me that was ashamed of it, even after all these years. And she kind of stopped for a minute, and I think she didn't understand it, because I'm married to a cisgendered heterosexual male. And so that's what she said. She was like, "But you're married to a man." And I was like, "Yeah, that's yeah, it doesn't change who I am. I'm just married to a guy." And then I think I was just so upset, and I think she was just trying to find something to say. And then she was like, "Well, of course we love you anyway." And so when you break it down like that, it's like, yeah, I'm still going to love you, but there's still something wrong with you. Or when I hear people say, "Well, we love the sinner, but hate the sin."
Yeah, and I go like this. Yeah, whatever on that. Yeah. Fuck you. Fuck you too. Okay. I love the person and hate the religion, so hey. Yeah,
that's a good comeback.
Well, it's true. It is a put down. Is what they're saying is they hate the sinner, love the sin, whatever nonsense they're talking about. It's just nonsense, because they've already said that you are doing something immoral. And if you're going to try to call me out on a moral issue, you're going to make me upset and make me want to say something back. I mean, it's ridiculous. Just like, so do you have relationships only in your relationship, or do you have a poly relationship where you date other people? I'm just asking because you're bisexual. Doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah. I started out with the label of bisexual because at the time, like I said, I grew up in a very sheltered environment, and all I knew is were very rigid gender roles. And so, of course, I looked at gender as binary. There are males and females. And so when I first came out, I still had that thinking. So I was like, oh, I'm bisexual. And since then, as my thinking has evolved more, I've taken on the label of pansexual, so that I'm much more inclusive, because I don't look at gender anymore as just male or female. So I would say I'm pansexual. Right now, I'm in a monogamous relationship. My husband is monogamous. I feel as though I'm, of course, still exploring who I am, but I am in a monogamous relationship right now. But he's really supportive of me trying to figure out who I am, so I really appreciate that in him. I know this year I was making my sign for Pride, and it was a pansexual flag, and it said hearts, not parts. And while I was making it, he was like, well, I can't go with you to Pride. He had some other obligation, but he was like, but while you're making this sign, I'm going to play music by gay artists. And so it was really nice. Like, he was playing me some Elton John, and I had some Queen going on, and he's just really super supportive. So, that's nice. But he has definitely said that he is, strictly monogamous, and I'm still trying to figure myself out, but right now I'm in a monogamous relationship.
Okay, so you're monogamous because of your relationship, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a problem. I'm not judging. I'm just asking.
Yeah. No. I didn't take it as judgment from you at all. I feel like as humans, we evolve, like our nature evolves. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. I'm probably not going to be very well versed in it, but I'm definitely not who I was last year. So I feel like I'm still coming into myself, and I may be doing that my entire life. I don't know that there's just one person or one nature that I'm going to have. And then when I discover that that's what I'm going to be, I think that my entire life I may be changing. And I think that the atheism part and even coming out to my parents was super shocking to them, because they've known me as one person for most of my life. And then to turn around and say, hey, by the way, I don't believe that there's a God. And I'm also not just attracted to males. They were like, who is this person? So yeah, as far as my relationship goes, we have, I'm in love with my husband, and he says he's monogamous, and I say, okay, well then that's what our relationship's going to be, because I respect him. I think that if ever I were to say, maybe I'm not monogamous, maybe I am poly, that's something that we would, of course, sit down and communicate. He's really open to communication. It's just not something we've sat down and really talked about right now. I'm not really at that point, but I think we would, and we'd sit down and talk about it and see what that meant for us and for, the future of our relationship.
Yeah, I know I'm poly. That's one of the things I've always been that way. I mean, my first time experiencing, more than one person was when I was 15. And I didn't know. I was very sheltered. I didn't know, like you said, you didn't know anything about yourself. I didn't know that anyone else had ever done this. I mean, that's just stupid now. I think, what the hell is wrong with me? Of course, people have done all the history of the world. But then several other times, it would always come back to that, because it's just kind of who I am in relationships. I've now been in a relationship with my wife, who's bisexual. I've been in a poly relationship for almost 10 years.
Oh, okay. So
it's not like a new thing. And someone today made a comment, because I posted a thing about, I have a group called Atheists for Non-Monogamy. And he posted a thing on that saying that I was obviously some new fad I think that I've found, and it's been around since humanization. Like, I don't know this. Like, doesn't even know who I am. Like, dude, I know a lot more than you do. Read a book on it called The Myth of Non-Monogamy, but okay. Science can support me, but okay, your opinion's correct. He said I was egotistical Looney Tunes. Oh, okay. I don't know. Is it atheist? It's amazing how they still keep this moralistic bullshit from religion. Like, I'm a bad person. I'm an ego because I like to love or care for or have sex with more than one person. That makes me egotistical? What the?
Yeah, when I first started getting involved in online atheist communities, I was like, wow, I'm really surrounded right now by people who I feel are more enlightened and people who are more progressive. But then the more I was interacting, I would, of course, still come across the people who were like, oh, privilege doesn't exist. Like, I'm white, but no, there's no such thing as white privilege. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Or there's no such thing as male privilege? And then, like, the one thing that really got me was when I would be in the groups and somebody would make a rape joke. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm sorry, but people who've been sexually assaulted are not going to find your rape joke funny. And for you to sit there and say, well, you just shouldn't get offended about it. These are people who've suffered traumas in their life. And, you know, why can't you, as an atheist who I think should be, you know, a free thinker, or why are you still, I don't know, doing stuff like that? That bothers me, yeah.
Well, simply, everyone is indoctrinated into religion.
Yeah.
There's no real teaching on atheism. That's why people get so irritated with me. How I constantly keep teaching stuff and explaining stuff and breaking things down. They're like, isn't it good enough to leave good enough alone? I'm an atheist. No, it's not, obviously. Because look at all these people that have these bizarre ideas, and they are atheists. So no, it is not going to be something we should leave alone. The problem is that all they do is they remove like the God concept and keep all the nonsense. So that's why I work so hard, and I will keep working, and don't care if it pisses people off. I'm going to keep explaining everything because we really need to know. I'm not saying you have to believe like me, but I do, as you said, free thinking. I do want you to think, preferably for yourself or someone else who's reasonable, not go fall back to myths.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that some of these groups that I'm in, like feminism is not popular in there. Like it's sort of made fun of, or people are like, oh, feminazi, and I'm like, I thought I was getting away from this stuff, and I'm still surrounded by it.
I know, it's crazy. I that's why I piss people off too. Every time I post feminism, I always lose friends. Always. Atheist friends. Oh, every time. It's funny, I told this one guy, it's funny how they'll say, well, I use humanism. But when I start explaining, once again, because I understand terms, I start explaining what terms mean and how it doesn't mean what they think it means. Humanism is not saying that we fight for all rights. Well, in a sense, it kind of does, but in an offhanded way. Because what humanism means is human can solve human problems through human means. And thus, you do not need to rely on faith or on doctrine teachings. You can. So anyways, I was talking about humanism, the fact that humanism is basically a philosophy that says that humans can do things by human means. It actually comes from Christianity. Its origins are from Christians that basically were, in a sense, like you mentioned, free thinkers before. It basically was a form of free thinking, which free thinking is not atheist. People have this mistaken idea. Free thinking just means you're open to new ideas. You're free thinking. That you generally try to, stay open and understand or think over concepts. A lot of words are used, interchangeably in our movement, which is why I constantly try to explain what these words mean so that we use them correctly. And, but you know what? People are going to constantly change how words are used also, which I do understand. I mean, we say the word, things are cool, and we don't mean actually cold.
Right.
So I understand that there's other ways to use words, but the problem is that when we use words in place of correct words, then we actually lose meaning and things instead of adding to it. So that, anyways, go back to the humanism. So people say they're humanism, they're not feminist. And I say, okay, if you feel that's a valid thing that covers, you don't need to say, you must not say that you support gay rights. You must just tell people, no, I'm a humanist. And they say, well, no, I support gay rights. Then you understand there's a distinction when you label what you support. So that's why I say feminism, since I support women being equal. But it also has to do with the fact of the area of seeing with a gendered lens and understanding. Like everyone sees me. You know what everyone thinks? I'm cisgendered, male, and I'm heterosexual and, whatever, monogamous. Some of those things are not correct. I am not cisgendered. I am mildly intersex. I am genderqueer in my thinking, which you look at my page enough, you see me posting cats and, puppies and whatever. I like a lot of stuff. I like decorating. I like arts. I like plays. I can't stand football. I hate working on cars, I'd rather, decorate a room than, go out there and shoot guns. Although I do like some things, but I'm just saying that people's opinion of me is immediately wrong because they have this gendered thinking. And so to me, feminism is also that getting people to understand that how I act is fine. If people don't act correctly, like they're not man enough. I always tell people, it's really interesting when you say, well, someone's not a man, what do you say? You're basically saying they're a female. But you say it like that's a bad thing.
Right.
Like someone else, they'll call someone a pussy. Well, a pussy is a part of a woman, so you're saying that a part of a woman is bad. When you say someone doesn't have balls, you're mentioning that they're a woman because they don't have testicles. I mean, it's...
Right. Yeah, and it's used as an insult.
Yes.
I mean, you can hear football coaches do it. Stop playing like a bunch of pussies.
Or little girls.
Well, I mean, yeah, or girls. Why are you saying that? I mean, it's meant as an insult. And the fact that women and women's genitalia is used as insult.
Yeah.
For men, that's part of what I think feminism is.
I agree.
I'll have people say to me, well, I'm an egalitarian. And that's why I don't say I'm a feminist. And I'm like, well, the reason I specifically say feminism is not because I want females to dominate the world and take over the world and that I want men to be oppressed, because that's what some people think feminism is. I'm saying it because there needs to be that space for women to work on women's rights. Of course, women, and then our male allies or our genderqueer allies, whatever. And I don't know. It just baffles me sometimes. I mean, some of the things that people say. But you were right earlier when you said people are indoctrinated, and we still have.
They are.
I still have some thinking sometimes when I told you that when I came out, and I was like, still, like even after all those years where I knew that I didn't just like males, there was still a part of me at 25 years old that was like, I'm still a little bit ashamed of this.
Oh, yeah.
And that was from all of that religious indoctrination.
Totally. I had a lot of shame. I mean, just to think, could I not tell people about me? I mean, I could certainly pass as a cisgendered male, no problem. I mean, maybe not no problem, because I always do things. I end up telling on myself because I always do things that don't really match male. And people always go, why are you doing that? So I guess I in a sense, but I can still blow it off and go, oh, well, whatever, But I mean, the reason I say it distinctly is because I want to break down that boundary. I want to remove the shame for myself. I remember that, how I first found out that I always knew my life. I always didn't follow the rules. Everyone said I was dramatic or weird. They did, some people thought I was gay because the way I acted was just so not conforming. But I wasn't even trying. I was just being myself. It wasn't like I was trying to be anything. I was being myself. But I went to the doctor to have my testosterone checked because I'm real sexual. And I thought, well, maybe it's a problem. Maybe I need medicine or something, Maybe there's something wrong with me. And the doctor checked my testosterone because I know that if you have too much testosterone, it can make you more aggressive, more sexual. So I had my testosterone checked, and the doctor says, yeah, your thing is real low. I go, really? He goes, yeah, it's lower than most women. Your testosterone is lower than most women. And I felt immediate shame. Like, I'm no good. I'm less than most women. I mean, that was like, I told him, you did not need to say that. I mean, no one who thinks they're a guy wants to hear, yeah, that thing that makes you a man? Yeah, you don't even have as much as women have. I mean, so you're less than a man than a woman. It's like, oh man, that was, it was super shameful. And that was the first time I started realizing, because I started looking into it, I started realizing that I'm not really a cisgendered male. That I didn't ever, understand that. So he told me, didn't your parents ever say anything? And I'm like, well, no. So I ended up talking to my mom, and she's like, oh yeah, we knew. We were hoping that it wouldn't make a difference.
Oh.
And I go, you mean my whole life I felt fucked up and didn't understand? I didn't fit in with men. I wasn't gay. I didn't know what the fuck was wrong with me. And this whole time you knew? Ooh, that pissed me off. But it's the same thing, indoctrination and shame. They're taught it's male or female. So when the doctor told them, I'm male kind of and kind of not, they're like, fuck that.
Yeah.
That's why I have a meme that says that some people are disgusted by sex for religion reasons. I'm disgusted by religion for sex reasons.
Yeah, I saw that one. I really liked it when I saw it. I mean, when I was answering your questions that you posted about the interviews, and I put possibly genderqueer, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about I feel like I'm still discovering myself, sort of coming into my own. Something that you said earlier really just kind of makes sense to me now, where you said, like, mentally.
Yeah, mentally.
Genderqueer.
Yeah.
I present outwardly as more feminine. So, people, like you said, people may look at you and think you're a cisgender male, that you're heterosexual. Like, I'm married to a guy, so immediately people go, you're heterosexual. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm married, yes, to a cisgendered heterosexual male, but I am not heterosexual. In terms of my thinking, it's sort of the same thing. I was having a conversation with one of my friends one time, and I was like, I think I could be genderqueer. I know I don't outwardly present it because I present as being more feminine. But my thinking, though, mean, like, if I'm ever fantasizing, sometimes I'm taking the more male role of things. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, I might not just be female. And so when the way you said it, I thought was perfect, like mentally genderqueer. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, because I would say that intersexed, I'm probably 10 to 15% intersex. So I'm mostly male. That's why on my profile, I put intersex, genderqueer, male, because I believe that actually all three is correct. It's not correct for me to say just one. I'm fine with people calling me he or whatever. But really, like some people say they. Probably that would almost be a better way to explain who I am. But I just say he is fine. But so I'm not that intersexed. I am intersexed, but it's very mild. But mentally, it's not mild. Mentally, it's almost 50-50. I mean, it's like 60-40, 60% male and 40% female. It's, I think, very female. I mean, in fact, so female that, like, when I was in school to be a counselor, a psychologist, I was in the class and the teacher was male, and he said to me, "Doesn't it feel weird to be the only male in the class?" I had to look around because I didn't even notice. I mean, I feel so comfortable in thinking and being around women that it doesn't feel like I'm someone different. I just feel like I'm one of them or something. It doesn't feel, and I felt bizarre. I told him, well, now I feel weird because you brought it to my attention. I was feeling fine.
Yeah, I had tons of male friends growing up, and my mom was like, why don't you have any girlfriends? And I had a couple, but I was like one of the guys. I just hung out with the guys all the time, and I was kind of tomboyish. And I still have gender thinking sometimes, and I try to break away from that. And again, it comes from that indoctrination. My mom recently was asking me, what do you want for Christmas? And I was like, I don't really care. I don't really want anything, but we happen to be in a store. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, you know what I want? I want some guy clothes. And she was like, what? And I was like, really? I want some dress shirts, and I want some little vests that I can pull over it, and I want ties. I want to wear some ties. And she goes, why do you want to dress like a man? And I was like, just because I want to. Or why do we even have to think that dress shirts and vests and ties are inherently male? So that's what I got. I mean, I got some ties and stuff for Christmas, and she was kind of okay with it because I tried it on, and she was like, oh, that looks cute. But I think she was a little worried that I was going to go around looking like probably a butch lesbian is probably what she was thought.
Right, but to me, just someone who's a butch lesbian probably is genderqueer or something like that. There's a lot of people that are gay, straight, or otherwise. It's not that only people that are gay are genderqueer. Genderqueer is a mental thing. It has to do with gender. I don't know why people. Sexuality is different. Gender is a different thing.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of problems too, because people that say they're genderqueer, probably 80%, or something, are also bisexual or pansexual or whatever. And so I've had people attack me. Well, how can I say I'm straight? I said, well, I'm actually, then how about this? I'm a gynosexual. I'm a person who's attracted to females, the vagina and body and mind and whatever. It's not just the vagina, but I mean, it's the whole mind. Right. I like female, like thinking, and I like it. So, but it doesn't really matter what the term I give. You understand what I'm saying.
Right.
But, and I don't get how people that even are trans or whatever, not all, but there's some people that don't understand. It's bizarre to me. They should get it, if anybody, the difference between gender and sexuality. Because if you say someone's transgender, that doesn't mean they're gay.
Right, absolutely.
It doesn't mean they're bisexual. It doesn't mean, you don't know what, they've only told you their gender. They haven't explained everything else about them. So I find that just, to me, really bizarre. But I think it still goes back to the same thing. We're indoctrinated. The society is indoctrinated by religion, because most people are religion. You know that our society is. Go to another society like China. Go to another society like, someplace in Alaska or something, or someplace in Greenland, or you go to different places, South Africa. You go to different places, and people have different ideas about what's appropriate for the culture, because culture obviously is a group of people. The group of people, if they're mainly religious, are then going to be the culture.
Right.
So it's like when people say, like, this is a Christian nation. It's a nation of Christians. That would be more, kind of correct.
Right.
And that's certainly, Judeo-Christian values. Yeah, it does have a lot of Judeo-Christian values. And that's what we need to fight against, because that's a problem. It's religion values. It's not human values. It's religion values. So yes, it constantly, and that's why I think people are like, well, I just believe in God. Yeah, actually, it's like saying I only believe there's a spider that hangs in the air and there's no spider web. Well, of course they go, well, you don't hit my spider. No, I walk into the webs.
Yeah.
Constantly. And they feel disgusting and they ruin my life.
Yeah.
So I don't run into your God belief. Yeah, true. I don't. I run into all the other beliefs that support the God belief.
Right.
like you said, the fact there's only male and female. Yeah. Open a science book. The science will immediately remove you of that flawed thinking. Science does not think. But since we're on that subject, if you're going to say that there's only male and female, then actually there's only female. That would be more correct. Since every human, the default is female. Clearly evident, it only takes an X chromosome to make a female. Males have an X chromosome. So they don't get this, since I learned this when I was in counseling in biology, that everyone starts out female. It takes 3 processes to make a male. This is why also there's a lot of people that aren't totally male, like me. Because one of those things even a little bit messes up or doesn't do it right or whatever, you get not really male. Because really the default is female. So the first one is anti-feminizing androgens. It tries to stop you from being female. It's got to stop you because the default is female. Then it has to do masculizing androgens. It has to actually make you male. Because once again, if it doesn't, the default is female. Then it actually adds testosterone to make a whole bunch of other things kick in. But the point what I'm trying to say is, So if you're going to try to say that it's, Adam and Eve only, okay, actually it's only Eve then.
Right.
That would be more correct. If you want to try to, you want to get technical, we're a bunch of Eves. How's that? But
yeah, and bringing science into it is interesting because, I mean, even when you look at the animal kingdom and you look at monogamous relationships, I mean, there aren't that many, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of the animals don't have monogamous relationships. And then we as humans have been told that's what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a religion
you're supposed
thing.
To just have partner. Yeah.
And, well, I would say there's a couple things. So there's religion, there's safety. It always affects safety. The religion part has to do with controlling people. You don't want people doing whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they do whatever they want, they might stop believing too. Because why would you want to be repressed? So it's important for the religion. But the other thing is that the reason why you would care too is the fact of keeping the progeny your own. That's what monogamy's goal is that your children are your children. But as you said, this isn't even a thing like in the Hazai people of South Africa, which have not really changed in about 15,000 years. They're all pretty much still living almost like in the woods, or whatever, out in the things. Anyways, they're the most primitive. They have some of the oldest DNA too. The other Bushmen of Africa, there's 5 of them that basically have the oldest DNA in the world. But anyways, unchanged. But anyways, the fact is, you know how they see society? They see society a little different than us. Children are the group's responsibility. Everyone that sees a child in need should then try to care for the child in need. It's a totally different mentality than ours. So when you start with that mentality that it doesn't matter, then it doesn't really matter if the child is yours, since you would love all children. So it's our confined thing. It goes back to me to almost like xenophobia. I only care about my thing, my family, my group, my country, my region, my what is my religion. It's this.
Yeah.
Which is basically boiled down to fear, 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 fear. I always tell people that that things that we fear, we come to hate, right? But see, how we start fearing things is usually when we don't understand something, it makes us feel uncomfortable, so we start to fear it. And then things that we fear, we learn to hate. Things we hate, we seek to destroy. So there's a big thing about why we should stop fear. Very, very important. It's a destructive thing that usually leads to hate and destruction of things. So certainly things that have no reason, no one should fear you being pansexual. No one should fear me being genderqueer. I mean, me being poly. Why should that make you be afraid? It shouldn't. There's nothing to be afraid. There's nothing unnormal. As you said, it's natural and thing. I mean, just like you're talking about animals being not, monogamous. Animals also, do you know that every single animal that's ever been witnessed that has sex with other animals has been exhibited or witnessed having homosexual relationships? Everything. Everything from like amoeba, whatever has sex with other things, lizards, birds, bugs, all of it. Why? Because it's just natural.
Right.
The unnatural thing is this religious fear of sexuality.
Right. It's just crazy.
So now that you're out about that, do you talk about that and support other people, or what are you thinking about doing something like that in the future?
As far as sexuality goes, or
sexuality or atheism, both things. Now I'm saying now that you're out about both of them, either of them or whatever.
And that's why I try to speak out about it, is for those people who don't or feel like they can't, because I felt like I couldn't for a long time. Even if they get to read it, then they can see that somebody else has gone through it, or somebody else is going through it. So yeah, and I, like I said earlier about the atheist communities, I mean, I'd like to get much more involved in activism. Anytime I go to any kind of training, I've been working on my addiction certification, and anytime I go to any training and they have you introduce yourself, and then they're like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I'm like, I'd love to be doing some like more activism. As far as sexuality goes, just because I had, I think, such a bad experience with it, with growing up and having all that in my mind and not being able to, or not feeling like I could tell anybody, or feeling like I was sick. And then even with the atheism, because there's such a stigma on it for us. So yeah, I mean, I try to be vocal about it to an extent on social media, and I'd like to be out in the community being vocal about it as well. I mean, it's lost me some friends, of course, but that's okay. I mean, when I lose people like that, I'm just like, well, were we really ever friends to begin with? I mean, I had a strained friendship with a couple of people, and right after we kind of just ceased being friends, I think one of them posted on Facebook, like, "Oh, like, don't worry about losing friends. God's just getting rid of your enemies," or something like that. And I was like, really? Like, you feel like I'm your enemy just because I don't believe the same thing as you? We were supposed to be friends. I thought for these years we've actually been friends. I mean, you know, I don't believe the same thing as you, but I was accepting of you. Obviously it didn't go both ways. But I don't know. I think, and as I said earlier, I think we're so villainized also in this society that I want to break down all of that stigma and show people, you know what, I have morals, I am a good person, and I don't have to believe in a God or fear some sort of punishment after death to act in a moral manner.
So when you say you're a good person, what do you mean by that? I mean, I think I understand, but what does that mean to you? If they asked you, well, what do you mean you're a good person? What would you tell them? How would you prove that?
So when people ask me, well, you know, how do you know how to act, you know, right or wrong? How do you know what's right and what's wrong? And I just tell them the way I look at things is how the results of my actions. So if I'm going to make a decision, I will think about how is this decision going to affect those around me? How's it going to affect me? But how is it also going to affect those around me? And if it's going to have a negative impact on people around me, then it's probably not something that I should be doing. I was watching a video not too long ago, and it was an atheist mother, and she was in a church, and they had invited them there for like a question answer type thing.
Yeah.
And one of the church members asked, well, how do you raise your children? And she said, what I tell them is, if everybody in the world just did what you did, what would the world be like? And so I kind of think about that too. I mean, if I were to go around being hateful of everybody and being a bigot, well, if everybody else in the world was going around doing that, it'd be a really hateful place. So I look at results, or what the results of my actions would be, and that's how I base my decisions and my morals, my actions.
Okay. Well, I was going to say to you that when you were saying that, it sounds like what you're talking about is what's called consequentialist ethics. In other words, that the consequence that you see in the future of an action, and this is a rough draft, I mean, it means more than this, so if anyone understands consequentialist ethics, don't I'm just giving the rough draft. It basically means that it's an involved philosophy, but I'm just giving the basic idea. That basically means that because you understand something is going to have a negative thing, then you understand that because of that, it's immoral or not good. But you can go look, or I can give you a link on consequentialist ethics. But
Okay.
In a sense, a lot of people. Well, I was going to say that a lot of people generally would have that. It's called moral reasoning, the ability to analyze what's the ramifications or all the actions involved or issues involved in a action to adjust your understanding if it's moral or immoral or good or bad or whatever. But so it's not really like a lot of people really would be that. Some people, though, are utilitarian ethics, or sometimes they mix things together. A utilitarian ethics basically says that you want to do the greatest good and try to do the least harm. But this means sometimes you have to do harm to people that don't deserve it because some have to be sacrificed for the greater good. Then there's like care ethics, which says you should always do good and harm none. So it depends on different people's thinking. But the whole point is, I would tell people, it doesn't matter whatever. When you use religion, you're not using moral reasoning. And if you use moral reasoning, you've just stopped using religion. Which religion is what? Laws. You either follow them or you don't. There's nothing to reason. Are they good? In other words, if the law says you can't be homosexual because of religion, then you don't. It doesn't mean that religion is bad. I mean, homosexuality or, whatever is bad. It just means the law says it is. It doesn't mean it's actually bad.
Right.
It just means that it's a law. So it's not, because if you reason, can people do actions that they choose by themselves? Yes. As long as everybody is an adult and doesn't care, does it matter? No. I mean, done. It's not a moral question. The only moral would be are they not consenting? Well, if they're not consenting, then if you do it anyways, then that would be bad.
I mean, the people who will say things like, well, if you're an atheist, what's stopping you from just, doing whatever you want to do? Or one time I saw somebody post like, atheists just want to be atheists so that they don't have to be held accountable by anyone. And I'm like, if the only thing that's stopping you from going on like a murderous rampage is because of some holy book or because you're like, oh, after I die, I might, go to hell, then you're not a good person if that's the only thing that's stopping you from doing that.
Well, and just like you pointed out, I mean, and often the only reason people do murder is religion. They say kill gays because God hates gays. Or they say kill non-believers, because they're non-believers. I mean, what? I mean, so to me, I agree with what you're saying, and religion also is one of the reasons people that do bad things are justified. I've heard before someone say that nobody does bad as joyfully as someone who thinks they're doing it for a religious reason. I mean, when you think that you have God on your side, you feel like that any action, no matter how horrid, is okay as long as God doesn't look down on it.
Right. And then the whole idea that you can almost do anything and then just ask for forgiveness and everything's fine. Like, you don't even have to have guilt about it. You don't have, like, I feel like, okay, I'm an atheist, so there's nobody for me to be like, oh, hey, except for other humans. Like, if I wrong another human, then I can go, hey, listen, I'm really sorry, and could you forgive me, or could you, but I don't have to say, well, okay, I just wronged you, but it doesn't matter whether you forgive me, because what matters is that God's forgiven me.
Oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that's not a good way to live. But if people think that that's a good way to live, and then they look at me because I don't believe in God and say that I'm the one that is lacking in morals, or I'm not a good person.
What's been funny to me is they want to say that God is all loving and all justice and all mercy. You can't be all mercy and all loving and be all justice all at the same time. Because the moment you give mercy, what you're saying is you're doing a suspension of justice. That's like saying, well, Hitler, as long as he, said that he believed in God, that he would have gone to heaven no matter what he did. that's a complete suspension of justice. Justice would be that he should be punished for killing people, not rewarded with everlasting life in heaven.
Right, just for believing. And,
just for believing. So people don't get that believing. Your God cannot, if you say your God is all loving, all mercy, he then is not being all justice. If you say he's justice, then he can't be this other. He can't be mercy. You can't have them both. If you have unlimited mercy, you automatically have limited justice.
And just here recently, I've had people who have questioned me and been like, well, how can you for sure say that there is no God or that there is no heaven? It's because of a post that I made. It was the anniversary of my grandmother's death. And I was like, right when she died, people were like, oh, well, it's okay. You'll see her again and all this stuff. And I mean, I just kind of, brush it off when they said it, or I'd say, thank you or whatever, because, I mean, I wasn't about to start anything, but,
right.
I'm not going to see her again. But at the same time, it just means that I want to cherish the moments that I have with people here, because I don't think, I'm not going to see them after we die. That's it. But somebody was like, well, how do you know, for sure, how can you for sure say that there is no God? And I'm like, listen, right now, there is no evidence, there's nothing that says that there is some sort of supernatural being. And if there was, if a God was to come out of the sky right now and go, okay, here I am, I do exist, then I'd be like, listen, which God are you? Because, some of the things that you did are horrible, like the fact that you can just let children be raped and stuff. You're supposed to be all powerful, but you refuse to stop that kind of stuff. If I know that a child's about to be put in harm's way, I'm going to stop it. I'm not going to sit there and then say, you know what, free will, I'm going to let it happen. And then after they die, I might punish them. But if they ask for forgiveness, I'm not going to punish them.
Yeah, it's not moral. They don't understand what moral is. That's the problem. Is when you're religious, you don't understand what love is. It's totally confused. They think of love as fear, or love is being surrendering yourself, or not being in control, or some bizarre thing. They have this bizarre notion of justice because they don't really believe in it. They have a bizarre notion of ethics, because they say that the most ethical being is their God, Christian God. Let's just talk about the Bible God. Most ethical? You mean the being that killed the entire earth? That being is what you're talking about? That being has killed more people than Hitler. How is that the most ethical being? If you think that's ethical, you do not understand what the word ethics means. Obviously. Right. So, it's why I say the indoctrination to me is so dangerous. It's not one belief. They act like it's this little belief all by itself and nothing connected. It is a black widow with a humongous spider web that everybody is constantly walking into. It has all these really bizarre beliefs.
Yeah, and we keep going back to this indoctrination thing, and it's so important, I think, to speak about it, because I know just recently my mom was like, I don't know what happened to you. You seem to be such a follower now. Before you had such a strong will and all this stuff. And I'm like, Mom, really, if anything, I was a follower then, because I went exactly with what you guys told me, exactly with what the preachers told me. And that's just what I believed. And now I've started thinking for myself, and I've started questioning things, and all of a sudden I'm no longer a strong-willed. All of a sudden I'm a follower now, just because I'm trying to break away from that indoctrination.
Yeah, they think it is without that's like you said before about if you don't have religion, you don't have morals. They think if you don't have this indoctrination, you can't think. They're not getting that indoctrination is what is keeping you from actually thinking. But don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that religious people can't be good people. Right. Certainly they can. When they're not following their religion, they can. I always tell people that you show me somebody who's a really caring, loving, good person who's religious, and I'll show you someone who's not following their damn religion.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they would have to cherry pick their religion. Almost every religion is sexist, homophobic. I mean, religion starts with the premise. I remember when I took my class would help me become an atheist in college. I learned 10 religions basically in 10 weeks, and I found out that they all have the same thing. They have the only answer. They know how you should live your life. Their ethics are the right ones. They know the only plan to the afterlife that, of course, they say is real. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just this indoctrination that our way is the only way, and don't think, just follow. Like you said, so it's like, how are you following now? You've stopped following.
Right, exactly. I know. I tried to explain it that way, but I can't. And she's tried to start making a rule, like at the dinner table, we can't talk about politics or religion because my dad and I will just go back and forth. And then she's like, oh, you guys are ruining dinner. And I'm like, well, he started it.
Yeah, that must be hard. It is hard that we can't talk about stuff with our family. I know it makes my relationship, my family, very hard. Even the few people like my mom who, really kind of talk to me, you almost can't talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, my family, I think we just don't talk about it. I mean, I have a really great relationship with my parents and with my brother. I mean, we're all really close. And, but I do think that they, I don't want to say ignore it, like ignore the fact that I've said I'm an atheist. But we just don't talk about it. And I guess we just kind of go as though it's not, it's not a big deal or anything. And for the most part, it's okay. I mean, I don't have to bring it up in every single thing that I do. But one thing that really, really bothered me, and I can't get my mom to understand why it bothers me, is one time we were sitting there, and I think it was probably a holiday meal or something, and I'm sitting there, and they always want to do prayer, and they want to pray before the meal, and I'm okay with the fact that they want to pray, but do not ask me to participate, because if you want to pray, that's okay. But I don't want to. I don't feel the need to. And so I was just sitting there, minding my business. I wasn't even eating, I hadn't even started eating yet. I was just going to wait until they got done. And then, she didn't say anything about it then, but not long after that, after we finished eating, she was like, it's really disrespectful when you don't bow your head during prayer.
Oh.
And I was like, can you please just see my side of this? I'm not participating. If you ask me to bow my head and close my eyes in prayer, you are asking me to participate. I'm not asking you not to pray at the dinner table. If that's what you want to do, that's okay. But don't expect me to participate. And it turned into a big thing. But I think as time goes by, I guess she's just getting a little more used to the idea that I'm not going to be going to church with her. I'm not going to believe that. And so we really just don't talk about it. And I still feel really close to them. I mean, if they watch this video, they're going to be like, oh my God, you're making us sound like such horrible parents. And I don't want anybody thinking that, they're not horrible parents. I had a good childhood. As far as they gave me everything that I needed. I mean, I had food and shelter and love. I mean, they loved me. And they were supportive of my school stuff and everything. And like I said earlier, I didn't give them the chance to show me how they would have been if I had said, hey, by the way, I'm not heterosexual. Just because I didn't come out. But, yeah, I mean, they've been loving my whole life. So, Mom and Dad, I'm not saying you're bad, because that's what she always says. Anytime I bring up anything about the past, or I say, well, this was going on or whatever, she's like, you're making me sound like I was just such a horrible parent. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that I wish it had been a little bit different. Like, I wish I'd have had the opportunity to choose whether or not I wanted to go to church.
Yeah. So speaking of your parents being horrible or not, my dad was my father, my biological father was a absolutely fucking horrible human being. And to me personally, he is still a fucking worthless sack of fucking shit to this day. And that's my loving, caring opinion of him. I would like to urinate on his fucking grave, just so he knows that in case he ever watches, go fuck yourself. But but my mom also did some negative things. But my mom has tried to ask for forgiveness and try to be a better mother. She was not a good mother, so you can't say that. I can. My mom was not a good mother, but she's tried to, in her own way, come back and be loving now. So I do love my mom. I still kind of talk to her. I do understand that she, wants forgiveness. The thing I told her, though, I said, see, I'm not religious, so I don't value forgiveness the way they do. Forgiveness to them is forgetness, as in somehow, no matter how horrid I was, as long as I say I'm sorry, then everything is over. Well, I'm sorry. I still had a fucked up life, So sorry doesn't make up for that. I understand now, and so I don't really give her the forgiveness that she wants because she wants me to forget. No, I'm going to keep talking about it. No, it was fucked up. But I do agree with you. I think it's important that everything is not always about anger. I mean, like some people that, you're just an atheist because you had bad parents. No, I was a Christian when I had bad parents. I was a Christian for 36 years. Yeah, having bad parents actually didn't turn me atheist. Learning real knowledge did. So I think it's important because I think people somehow think, you must hate your family as an atheist or hate God. It's not that case. I'm glad that you actually, love your parents. That's great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talk all the time. I have a very good relationship with them. Like, my mom every now and then will be like, hey, I'm going to come to your house so we can watch TV together. And I'm like, awesome. That sounds good to me. I mean, we are close. I just, when I say things like, I just wish when I had been a child that I would have felt like I could have opened up about not being heterosexual, or that even I had known about other religions and not just Christianity. And not just this one denomination of Christianity. I would have liked more knowledge as far as that goes, but then at the same time, I can look back on my childhood and go, like, even now, it's still helping me shape who I am, because I can look back and go, even though, I mean, like I said, it was a good childhood. They were supportive. Just the indoctrination portion was not good. I can look back and now say I didn't like that, but then I can also help other people who are going through it now and go, I've been there. I know exactly what it's like. I know what you're going through. It can get better. So yeah, I mean, I kind of appreciate it.
When you say it can get better, could you tell us some ways that it's gotten better?
I mean, that first moment where she was like, so what are you, like an atheist or something? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And it was like the moment the words just left my lips, I was like, oh, like it was like the world just opened up. I mean, it was like I was so unburdened all of a sudden. And I thought, have I been carrying around all of this, like all this stuff's just been weighing me down? And then I let go of it, and I've never felt more free in my life. I feel like there are tons of possibilities for me because I was so restricted at the time in what, like, okay, you can only be with males because girls are only supposed to like boys. And so, of course, it makes me think, did I miss out on some possibly, some good relationships when I was growing up that I would have gotten into had I been out. I mean, but I don't want to think back on and regret anything and say, well, I wish I could have done that. But, I mean, I feel like I probably did miss out on some things, had I been able to be more open. And now I'm able to, I don't know, be more open in things and not have to say, well, I better not go drink on Sunday, because you just shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't be drinking anyway, but definitely not on Sunday. And now I'm like, no, first of all, I'm going to sleep in on Sunday because I just want to be lazy and I don't have to get up and go to church. And then if I want to wake up and I want to take a drink, I'm going to drink on Sunday and I don't have to worry about it. I just feel like I have more freedom. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I mean, I don't drink. I haven't drank in about 25 years. But I know people always think, oh, well, you're religious? You don't drink? No, I don't drink because I'm an ex-addict. Mm-hmm. An alcoholic. That's why I don't drink. I don't get high on anything, and that's just kind of the point. But it's funny how they think that somehow if you're an atheist, like you said, you can't have morals. So if I was an atheist, I would just go drink again. It's like, yeah, no.
I'm like really glad you brought that up because, like I said earlier, I've been working on this addiction certification, and one of the things that we talked about is 12-step programs, and specifically AA. And because I've never been an addict, so I've never had to work any of those programs. But we were going over the 12 steps of AA, and of course, it keeps mentioning God, and then it'll say like, oh well, as you understand him, or the God of your understanding, or, whatever, or just, it needs to be a higher power. And it didn't sit well with me because I was like, I mean, why does someone have to have a higher power? And then they would try to say, well, but it doesn't have to be a God though. It could be anything. And I'm like, well, I'm going to call bullshit on that because I know what you really mean. You want it to be God, and what you're saying is that you're trying to say, oh look, we are being inclusive because it doesn't have to be a deity. It could be the chair you're sitting on.
Lies.
That's lying though.
That is complete lying.
God, and you want it to be the Christian God. That's what you want it to be. And so I started looking, like in class, I was looking online to see if there were secular 12-step programs, and I was so glad to find some because I thought, what happens if you come upon the client who says, I'm not going to do AA, or I'm not going to do a 12-step program like that because they talk about higher power and that makes me uncomfortable, or they talk about God and I'm just not about that, or they close it in a prayer and I don't like to pray. Then what do you say? Well, tough luck. You've got to do it. You have to find something for them. And so I was like, I'm so glad these secular programs are out there.
Yeah, well, I have some resources I can put in the link below this video, and I also can give you, I don't know if you've seen before, I have a thing where I explain not only my addiction, but the secular resources. There's quite a few different groups. Also, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll go look for it for you. But there's a thing, I think it's called the Orange Letters. It basically exposes why AA is actually a cult. And it doesn't even justify for mental health at all. It really should actually have nothing to do with it. There's a bunch of reasons. One of them being that their AA's recidivism, or the ability to keep people from, is about 5% to 3%. I mean, it's so low. Why anybody promotes it is only because there's so many groups to go to for free. That's it. If they didn't have that many groups to go through for free, in a sense, or people have this bizarre opinion that God is necessary. It sounds like religion, right? God is necessary for healing. Yeah. Because just think, what other mental health issue do we say the only help is God? None. But addiction. None. No one goes, you have cancer? Oh, shit. God. Come on. Prayer. you know.
Mhm.
That's the medical model, prayer, you know. Come on. AA is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I was in AA actually for about 18 years, really, until I became sober. I mean, I say became atheist. I started having a real problem with it. Before that, and I know a lot about AA. I was an intergroup representative for California, Southern California, and also GSR. Well, actually for Irvine, so people don't think it's the whole California, but in Orange County, Irvine, Orange County, GSR, General Service Representative for Orange County for AA. So I know. I've been to their meetings. I've been to things. In fact, I've even been to Dr. Bob's house in Akron, Ohio. Been inside his house, and it's very religious. It was always religious. In fact, I know a lot of the history of AA. In fact, Bill Wilson wanted it to be religious. They had no desire to make it actually inclusive, saying this was crap about a higher power. He didn't even want it in there. In fact, he didn't even want to write that stuff, and he did not write that. It was actually the difference was a war between the people in Akron, Ohio, and the people in New York. The people in New York, one of the ones that was running it was an atheist, and he said, I'm not going to say God. I'll maybe say a higher power. I'm not saying God. And so the people in Ohio were very religious. They wanted to actually, there was a time when they wanted to call it the James Group, as of the book of James from the Bible. They didn't even want to call it anonymous anything. They wanted to call it religion. I mean, and they wanted to say, because there's a part, they wanted to say that like the third step, they wanted to say that you bow on your knees before your creator. That they wanted to add that in there. But it's so funny because everything, I already know a lot of the history, everything before how it works in an AA book, anyone who knows AA will know this, but anything before what's called How It Works is basically has this minutia stuff about higher power or a God as you understand him. Everything after How It Works just says God, says your creator, says it no longer ever again in the book, because what happened is he worked to that point, Bill Wilson, when he wrote it, and they changed and added that stuff, and he said, I will not finish writing this unless you let me write it however I want. And so they said, okay, so that's why the rest of the book just says creator and God, and, you know, it's just all religion.
In some of the steps where it'll refer to God as capital H as in him.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, now you're automatically assuming a male.
That's right. Now can't be female.
And you're capitalizing it as it's done in the Bible. So you cannot tell me that it is not a religious group.
It is.
And that's what they tried to tell me, but I was like, listen, I know it doesn't sit well with me, and I'm very open-minded, so if I come across clients who are like, I can't do this, you can't expect them to go to a religious group, and we need to have the resources to say, don't worry about it. We're not going to send you to a religious 12-step program. We have some secular programs for you. Yeah,
but I'm just saying you can now, from my experience, I was in AA. I know shitloads about it, and I'm telling you, it is a religion. It is. They are correct. It's not attached to any specific Christian religion, but it is a branch of a Christian religion. That is absolute fact. I mean, it actually branched off of the Oxford groups, which was a Catholic thing and they had the absolutes. I think it was like the 7 or 12 absolutes or whatever. Kind of 12 steps. It was like the 7 absolutes or whatever. Absolute love, absolute forgiveness. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but yeah, it was always religious. It's total nonsense. Just like there's a thing called the third step prayer. You hear the third, it's in the AA book. If you hear the third step prayer, I mean, first off, prayer, what are you praying to? Yeah. Supposedly the not have to be God thing.
Right. That was the first thing that
the chair. We're praying to the chair.
You're saying it doesn't have to be a God, but then you're saying pray to it. Well, you really mean I should pray to a chair?
Well, yeah, then you just listen to the prayer. I can recite it because I was made to remember it word for word. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do witness to your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. I mean, tell me how that's a chair we're talking about.
I know.
No freaking way. And tell me that's not religion. How can you?
It totally is.
Totally is. You cannot. I always tell people, no, you can't bullshit me. I know way too much about AA. No.
Right. I'm just glad that to have you to talk to about this, because that was I don't have a lot of atheist friends. They're all online. I mean, I don't really have too many that I can talk to in person, but yeah, when I was going through this class, they were like, no, it's not this, and it's not this, and I was like, but it so is. I'm picking up on it. I'm really getting these, religious overtones in there. Like, it's totally in there. And I guess I was making a face, because I do that. And I was just making a face that was like, no, yeah, sounds religious. And the teacher was like, no. And I was just like, all right, it's fine to say it isn't, but I'm going to be prepared for those people who say, I'm not doing it, because I'm not going to go to some religious group.
Well, it is religion. I also tell people that the more and more I learned counseling and psychology, I realized actually that what they say is anti-psychology. Because if someone comes to us, we don't say, you're worthless and you're never going to be any good. If any counselor said that, they would probably lose their license.
Right.
I mean, what the fuck? But AA says that you need to admit that you are powerless, your life is unmanageable, and the only thing that can help you is some God, because you can never help yourself.
And when you're talking, like, you have people who maybe started drinking or whatever, doing any kind of substance because of a trauma where they were victimized, and then you tell them you have to be powerless. These are people who are trying to regain control of their lives, and they're trying to be powerful in their lives, and then you're turning around and telling them,
yes,
well, no, you have to give it all up. Like, you have to be powerless. You have to give up all that control. That's not going to be good for people who are victims of some sort of trauma.
Well, I don't personally think it's good for anybody to the way to your success is to remove any control over yourself. That's insane. The whole point is realizing you are in control. And also, I think that the other problem is it focuses AA or 12-step programs, to me, focus a lot of times too much on the fact of the addiction. To me, the addiction, and they say it in there. They say, oh, well, addiction is a symptom of a problem. Yeah, but their problem is sin, kind of. It's not, the problem is that I was victimized, that I was abused, that just like you said, how many people have addictions because they were trying to mask their feelings for being gay, or feelings from being, like you said, raped, or PTSD, so somebody's already been victimized, like you're saying, or oppressed, is trying to manage that, with a substance so they stop feelings, and then you're telling them that they're the problem. They need to remove them, so they already feel they're the problem. Now you're more
right.
shaming them. Let's shame them into good behavior. Yeah, that's just it's counter real counseling. We're supposed to empower people and tell them, to believe in themselves and how to strengthen themselves, not tell them you need to realize you're worthless.
Right. Because you are, and you're powerless. So just, accept that. I would not want to feel that way. I don't want to feel like I'm powerless and I'm worthless.
Yeah. It's like I said. Also, to me, the more I got into understanding psychology, the more I realized that the AA model in general of always being extreme abstinence wasn't the answer either. I mean, just think though, the 12 steps, they have 12 steps for people that have all kinds of issues, not just addictions of one kind. So there's some things though you can't have extreme abstinence, right? I mean, we'll admit this. Like, if say someone has a food addiction, they call that. You obviously can't say abstinence. If someone has a sex addiction, you can't say abstinence is the answer. You know, if someone has what they call love addiction, they say that women have. They say men have a sex addiction, women have a love addiction. I've heard this nonsense. To me, it both is nonsense, but because most of the time it's actually neither of those people have what they call addiction. Oh, you mean you're polyamorous? Probably you're just not monogamous. They call that addiction, or they call women that want to be loved, addiction. Bizarre. But the point is, even if it was true that was a case, they wouldn't say you have to abstain from love or abstain from all sexual contact and become celibate. But somehow, with alcohol, with drugs, the only method they think is okay is complete abstinence. It's bizarre, because truly the most important thing to me is always harm reduction. How do you make a person's life less harm, even because you can't stop every single behavior of our entire life. It's like saying don't do this or don't do that. People are always going to have things, or don't be scared. Stop being scared. Well, what if you have PTSD and or whatever thing, and you can't help it? The whole point is managing it so it's not hurting your life. That's really the goal, should be, of all counseling, right, to me.
And I was just about to say harm reduction. I mean, we were going over the models of addiction and how people view the problem of addiction. And I know, people who are really religious look at it as the moral model, and they're like, well, you just have a weakness of character. You're addicted because you're a sinner, because you just, have a moral flaw. And so we took this little self-assessment that kind of told us which model we fell into. And the moral model was on my least, it was the furthest down, but I scored highest in harm reduction. And I was the only person in the class, I think, unless there was one other person, who scored highest in harm reduction. And so we were watching a video on harm reduction. There was this clinic that will exchange needles. They do needle exchange. And then they'll give out, they'll just give out syringes and stuff. And really to kind of help, you're cutting down. I mean, when you do that, you're cutting down on a lot of the risks for STDs and STIs and just, all kinds of risks involved with drug addiction. And we were watching it, and then some people were like, well, isn't that just sort of promoting the drug use? And I was like, no, it's not promoting it. It's because these are people who were already using. It's not saying, hey, we want you to come start using, you can get your needles here.
Yeah.
The people who are coming here are already using, and we're trying to help them be, it's going to sound weird to say healthier, even though they're putting substances like that in their bodies, but they're doing it in a way that is less risky overall for society and for themselves as well. It's
care. It's applying care ethics, really. And understanding that first of all, I think the problem with addiction is we take it from a problem and we start to view it as a people. In other words, instead of saying, Damien has an addiction, you say Damien is an addict, as in that I am the addiction. And sometimes even I will say it like this, but I don't mean it like that. I don't mean that. In other words, like you said about flaw, we start to see the person as the addiction instead of saying the person experiencing the addiction symptoms, which would be more correct and more humane way. The problem is when people can point and say other, it's easier for us to fear and hate that. We really need to see these are still people. It instead of, like you said, moralizing their choices as something character flaw, we can just say this person is experiencing this and I care. And I want to try to help this person, experience less suffering and not put a judgment on them.
Right. And that's why I've had to, as I said earlier, I feel like I've had to sort of do the common ground approach with what I do. because where I want to say that these ideas that you have are going to be harmful to you, these ideas, if they don't come to that belief themselves, then I'm just going to damage our relationship. So I kind of have to go. Now, if they do have truly, destructive beliefs, then we can try to do some motivational interviewing to get that cognitive dissonance going. Like if you're saying, I want to go out right now and kill all women. Okay, well, that's a problem. That's a serious issue. And that needs to be addressed. But if they're just saying, I feel like my personal relationship with God is important in my life. Okay, well, now I can take that and go, well, let's sort of put it as part of your treatment plan. Like, how can we incorporate that into helping you get sober? Even though that's not what I believe, I've just kind of had to keep my mind open to their beliefs. And with working with such a diverse population, it's, I don't know, keeping an open mind's really helped me.
Well, like I said, to me, I always feel like we should be, respecting the human rights and the dignity of all people to choose their own beliefs. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't. I don't. It's like what I hear whenever I hear people say, "Well, I'm a Christian." What I hear is, "I like football team," whatever. I don't even know football, so I don't know, but whatever. Seattle Seahawks. I live in Seattle. Whatever. If they say that, it's like, okay, well, I don't like football at all, so whatever team they have is irrelevant. I just go, okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't even like football, so your team that you think is important really means nothing to me. I don't even like the whole sport, so.
Right. I mean, just like, I learned so much in this class, though. I mean, like, I'm sure you know Carl Rogers, like, person-centered
Yes, I do.
Therapy. And one of his biggest things was being, like, totally non-judgmental.
Yeah, it's called unconditional positive regard.
Right. And so.
Which I actually think is impossible.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, which I actually think is impossible. Unconditional positive regard, I think, is actually impossible. And I think, in a sense, I understand his point, but I think in a sense it can be destructive, because if I say I hate myself and I want to kill myself and I'm worthless, I don't see how you can view that positively. I mean, I understand they wouldn't. Right. He believes in a non-directive approach. I know. I like Carl Rogers. He's humanist, and I agree with him that I think that humans can solve human problems. We're definitely both humanists, but I think that he's also was religious. He also brought in esoteric and Eastern religion thinking, and his ideas, some of them have been proven to be not scientific and not actually be legitimate. I do agree with you. I know he is, and I like him, but I think that he his opinion about how to do things, like, because he said before, which, as I've read a couple of books by him, he said before that that it's okay to feel like killing people, that people feel like feelings all the time. It's really the actions. Well, I agree it's the actions, but I don't think it's okay to allow yourself to think about killing people. I think that if you have that, you should investigate why you have that anger and deal with it, not just say, oh, it's okay, everyone feels that. Everyone really doesn't feel like killing people.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point about the unconditional positive regard, because we debated that in class. I mean, and the suicide thing was the thing we brought up, which is, can you really sit there and as a counselor be okay and totally non-judgmental and have unconditional positive regard for somebody who says, yeah, I totally hate myself and I really think I just need to, end it all.
But I do get it. It's a simple phrase that he didn't actually project in a simple way. So I'm not, to people that understand Carl Rogers, I'm not putting him down. He was very much more involved than that phrase seems to convey. Because what he would do sometimes is manage things in a way that he basically sidestepped issues. Like, I'm sure you learned about transference and countertransference. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to me, actually, that's always happening. Because I think that we're humans and we're emotional beings. There's no such thing as not doing that, and to a small extent. And I think actually that who maximizes that potential of that always happening is actually psychodynamics. It says that we know it happens, and we're going to use that as the counseling tool, in a sense, to actually make it happen.
Right.
Or when we see it happen, to utilize it. See, Carl Rogers would just sidestep it. He didn't believe in countertransference. Well, he didn't deal with it. He would sidestep it. So, but it's still intelligent. It's still not. It's not like, say, like which there's a video where some female says to him, "Oh, I feel like you're my father," which is definitely transference. And how he manages that, he tries to sidestep it. He says, "And you would be a very good daughter."
I saw Gloria. I saw that.
Yeah. You understand? But so the point is, he actually did not deal with it. That's not dead. And he actually did something that could have made it worse, because now she could really feel like that the counselor is agreeing she's a daughter. So it could be something good. It could be good because he kind of handled it, made her feel good about herself. But it also can be bad because he didn't really acknowledge it and almost could have made it worse in a sense.
Right. And one of the things I really appreciate about the class is that as we were going over the theories, we talked about the pros and the cons of each theory. And we talked about the best approach is really to know different theories and to be able to adjust your style to the client. So if you have a client who would do really well with client-centered or person-centered therapy, then use it. Know how to use that. Or if you have somebody who would do well with reality therapy, well then, use that. So that was something that I really appreciated learning. And we did a self-assessment with that to kind of see where we leaned more. And I came out as existentialism, which when we were going over it, I was like, now this totally makes sense since a lot of the founders were atheists. That now makes sense to me why I would lean more that way.
Yeah, that's true. Well, a lot of counselors in general were generally atheists or something close to agnostic or whatever. They weren't. You don't have too many really hardcore thumpers that were psychologists.
Right.
Not generally. I mean, that's not to say there's none, but generally most of the famous ones, atheists, Gnostic, something. Certainly not religious extremists, usually.
Right.
But yeah. So what you're mentioning is called multimodality, which is the ability to do multiple types of counseling theories. So, even but the whole point is that what they're saying though is if you went to private practice, you could do that, because actually, if you're in a counseling thing, you actually say if you worked for Georgia, they may tell you have to use REBT, which is Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. You have to use a certain model. You can't just use whatever you like. So I think I do agree that we should have multiple things. I don't agree that you really have that freedom, because more than likely you have to work somewhere and they're going to tell you, we do whatever theory they like.
Yeah.
So
what I can say is that I do work for the government in Georgia. And thankfully, so far, I've not been told this is the method that you have to use.
Oh, that's cool.
We have some that they like to call it what works, because I work in the correctional field. So they call it what works, and they say that they want to use evidence-based practices, but not one specific, like you have to use client-centered or you have to use REBT. Thankfully, we've not gotten to that point.
Yeah, because often client-centered is considered to be, in a sense, not proven.
Yeah.
So but anyway, that's beside the point. So I was going to say to you that have you thought about using, or have you ever learned about, or do you use feminist therapy? I find some of their ideas extremely awesome. I like them.
Yeah, well, when we were in the class, we were very rushed for time, and so they hit on some of the bigger ones, and they kind of briefly discussed feminist theories. I have a feeling it's something that I would totally be down for, and I work with females.
Well, I can send you stuff because I did it, and so I wrote on it in school, and I was a big proponent.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
One of the things that I think that all counselors should do, that feminist therapists do, I think all, to me, but it's my own personal opinion, so whatever. But one of the things I think is absolutely awesome that they teach is to demystify the counseling. This, to me, is so important because the counselor is not doing it for you. The counselor should be there to inspire you to feel good about doing it for yourself. The counselor is not there to tell you who you are. The counselor is to listen and then mirror back what you're doing, to demystify. It's not magic. The thing is why it's important, because I believe it empowers the client to be demystified, because they realize it's not some kind of magic thing that you're doing that they can't do for themselves. Because I think that for me personally, this is me, all counseling should be to empower the person to no longer need the counselor. It's like the master. All masters, in martial arts should basically want, eventually, when the student becomes the master. I mean, the goal is not for you to forever be under some kind of authority that you... Like I've said to people, well, I've been a counselor for 20 years. I'm like, really? Then it's not working. Get a new counselor. 20 years? I'm not saying people can't have issues, but at some point, to me... you should, be empowered by the counselor to learn things to move on. It shouldn't. I mean, it's not bad to have friends, but that counselor is a paid employee. They should not be your friend, although they should be friendly. To me.
Right.
And that's why I think that is really an awesome thing, because the whole point is to tell people, I'm doing this because of this in this way, and do you understand? It basically in other words, like instead of me saying, what you should do is you should start writing a list of everything that you do that's positive during the day, and then wait 2 months and then read that, and then also have one where you write down another book, you write down all the negative things for the day. And then 2 months later, you actually review both of those, whatever. So it's saying to teach you an exercise. So the exercise is to show you that how you view the past actually doesn't match the reality. And it's very true. None of us actually are 100% accurate of what we think the past was, whether good, bad, or otherwise. Right. Some of the things you think were good at the time, you look back, you're like, fuck, what's wrong with me? That's not good.
Exactly.
Or you look like some of the things are bad, you're like, that wasn't that bad. I mean, you start having, which is also called doing stuff like that and understanding that it's how we script things. It's called narrative therapy, which is a type of therapy where basically you start with understanding that not only can you rewrite your new narrative to your life, even if you've already lived it, because you can see it differently, but to realize that we're constantly doing this. So we're constantly... writing a new script, and we're handing it to people. This is me, me. Sometimes, though, those scripts aren't fitting us anymore. Like you said, we're constantly changing.
Right.
So, but if I just told you to do it, and I didn't tell you the why, didn't empower you to understand how you could do this in the future with things, then I basically robbed you of the opportunity to fight for yourself. And I've made you dependent on another process I give you. Just like I'm sure you learned in counseling, they call it the miracle argument. Ever heard of this? Or miracle? That if your life, it says basically if your life is, it's just a technique. But I'm just saying, instead of giving techniques all the time to people and they think, wow, you're so, knowable, you just demystify them, that they're not really that special. But the miracle thing basically says, if your life could be perfect right now, what would that look like? Right now, if everything was perfect, your miracle happened, everything could be perfect right now, what would your life look like? And because sometimes people will go, well, I don't know what I want. Okay, let's just say everything's perfect. You get anything you wanted, your life's perfect. What would that look like? And if it doesn't look like what you're doing now, what do you need to do to change that? And then, is there a reason why you want this life as opposed to the one you have now? And you get people to all you're doing is basically just analyzing it, getting people to, but you tell them, this is, to me, feminist therapy would be to demystify it. We're doing this to help you to see for yourself how sometimes we think we don't know, but if we know that if everything is perfect, we actually don't like our life, then we should actually be trying to do stuff to make in other words, they call it making in group therapy, making the reoccurrent current. In other words, things that keep coming up, that we actually bring them to the top and say, okay, we need to deal with this. If it keeps coming up, it actually is an issue that needs to be dealt with.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that it's so important because I feel like especially like psychology, like Freud, psychoanalytic, their thing is almost, to me, 100% mystified. They basically let the client talk and they just go, yes, really, okay, write stuff down. Oh, that did what there? And they're like, well, so what do you think? Oh, we'll get to that later. Just keep going. But I'm still figuring you out, like somehow, and then I will tell you at the end, who you really are, Yeah, then you basically, usually because of that, it takes a long time. Because they have to basically almost, no help on your part, just listening to you, write down an entire thing about you. And then at the end, then they'll tell you and then tell you all these things you need to do. And no, I'm more immediate solution focused. I want to get to the problem now. People that come to therapy need help now. I mean, they don't want help 2 years from now. They would like help now.
Right.
So, I mean, unless you got unlimited amount of wealth and you don't mind feeling bad for a long time, then yeah, sure, that's a good method. To me, it's like, but I'm not knocking people that think that method can be effective in the long term. It can be effective. Once you get to the end, the counselor really understands you maybe and can really help you. But that's not my style. We need to help people right now. We need to care about them right now. We need to empower them to meet right now because there's problems now. People don't come to counseling and I would like to get better in 5 years. They're thinking I'd like to get better like tomorrow, if possible,
right.
Which may not be possible, but certainly. I think that there's ways of doing it different. So, what inspired you to get into that field?
When I first went to college, my degree was going to be in political science. I always thought, okay, I'm going to go to law school because that's what my grandparents wanted me to do. They were like, all right, you should get a poli-sci degree, and then you can go to UGA, and you can get a law degree, and then you can be a lawyer. And I was like, yeah, all right, that sounds good. So that was what I set out to do. And then I was so interested in, this is going to sound so weird, probably not to you actually, but I was so interested in like serial killers and why people would choose to act in certain ways and do certain behaviors, that I was like, well, but instead of going the psychology route, I decided to go the criminal justice route. So I did poli-sci was my major and criminal justice was going to be my minor. But the very first criminal justice class I sat in on, everything just clicked. All of a sudden, it all made sense. And I thought, this is something that I totally understand. And because I feel like I'm a helping person, like I want to be in a helping profession, and I want to deal with people that society just thinks we should throw away, it sort of made sense to me to then, I actually dropped the poli-sci and I just went to criminal justice as my major. Though I still could have gone the route of law school, I didn't. And as soon as I graduated with my bachelor's, I started working at a prison. And so I was able to start working with people in prison. And over the years, I feel like it's really fulfilling and rewarding work because like I said, you're dealing with a group of people that a lot of society just say, I will just leave them there, forever. These aren't people that should come back to society. And what we're saying is most of these people are coming back, and they're probably coming to your neighborhood. So don't you want them to get help while they're incarcerated?
Yeah, it's a real problem. Our whole system is basically punishment and not rehabilitation. And to me, that is extremely a bad thing because, as you said, we take someone who has issues or problems or maybe bad thinking, we put them together with a whole bunch more bad people that basically feed off of each other. And so then we're actually teaching them, indoctrinating them on how to be worse people usually, or they have to be more violent or whatever, not to be raped or abused, imprisoned. So we actually harden them and make them even worse than when they went in there. It's like you said, then they come back out and it's extremely destructive. It's
right.
It's bizarre. We need to be. To me, everyone should have to go to counseling, individual and group for thing, and then we should be teaching them trades. They all should go to college. They all should be learning stuff. I mean, we want these people to be improved. Just like I think it's also ridiculous how they can't vote ever if they've had a felony. Not even after 5 or 10 years, but never. I mean, there's no motivation to get better.
And this is something else that I'm really passionate about. Like I know earlier you were asking me about activism with, like the gay rights movement and then atheism and whatever. But this is also something that I like to speak out against because I'll see stuff all over the internet that'll say things like, oh, well, prisoners get free food and yet our children can't even get free food. Like, why is that happening? And I'm like, you don't want to eat the food that they're eating. Like, it looks and smells disgusting. So you don't want your children eating that food.
Yeah.
Or they'll say things like, oh, they're getting free this and whatever. And I'm like, you don't want the medical care that they're getting. Like, it's not good quality medical care. And so I feel like and now that I've been inside the system and I kind of see how it actually works, because I was that ignorant person when I was growing up. I was that person because I was so almost hate-filled that I was like, oh, like sex offenders, we should just put them all on an island and then we can just nuke it or something. That's horrible to think, especially as a teenager, growing up. And I'm like, how just that my thinking was so distorted. And now I look at sex offenders and I go, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's something going on here. These aren't people that we should just put on an island somewhere.
Yeah.
What I've seen with a lot of them is that a lot of them came from abusive situations also. And so I feel like I'm out there sort of just battling ignorance, and I'm trying to inform people about what it actually is like. And I feel like I'm trying to do the same thing also with the LGBT movement and also atheism as well.
Yeah, I'll address a couple of things you said. To me, first off, yes, children should have free food. So in my world, I mean, it shouldn't be that prisoners should not. I do agree with them. Children should be fed. I mean, so I mean, I think that's a separate issue.
Right. Right. You don't have to put the two together and say,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So just like saying that, like you said, that they get free medical. Well, I personally think that everybody should be, and any large society should have free medical. So, I mean,
right.
Your point is what exactly? Okay, I support the food for children, food and medical for all. I mean, that's just, to me, common sense. To be a human right. And another thing is that, like you said about people don't understand. People don't understand sexual issues that happen with people. Some people do. In other words, there's not one type of sex offender. There's actually multiple types. People would label it all as one kind of thing. It's not really one kind of thing. It's all sad, but it's not, or harmful, but it's not one kind of thing. Some people do it kind of like thinking that they're romantically, attracted to it. Some people do it because they have urges towards children. Not all of them do. All kinds of, some are, like you said, abuse, but abuse doesn't really produce people to be that way. But I do agree, especially younger. But usually, like if someone has a mental issue towards sexual abuse, it usually is evident by their time they're 15. By the time they're 15, they usually do stuff, because it's part of who they are. Now that's not a thing saying that I heard one person say, well, if it's who they are, that's like someone's gay, they should just be that. Yeah, no, that's violating other people's rights. So no. Mm-mm.
Right.
It may be who they are, but that doesn't mean you could just do that.
Yeah, and I think what I meant about the abuse is that I've seen people who started out that they were abused as children, and then they all were having sex within their own family for their entire life. Yeah. So a lot of incest was going on, and that's all they knew. So of course, when they started having children, okay, well, I'm supposed to have sex with my children because my parents had sex with me, and that's just what I'm supposed to do. And it goes back to that, I think, that indoctrination thing. So then, of course, they end up being sex offenders because that's just, what was going on. But yeah, I've read a bunch of articles, and I've seen all kinds of debates online about like pedophilia. And what I try to tell people is, like, pedophilia is not the crime. Like, the crime would actually be like child molestation.
Yeah, I understand. Even pedophilia is there's actually different levels of when they say that, because I think pedophilia has to do with prepubescent and teen, and there's a different one from prepubescent to baby. There's different classifications. So it's doesn't mean everyone uses the one word to mean everything. There's different words, but yeah.
Right. And then when I'll say things like, that's not the crime, like the attraction is not the crime. The crime would actually be acting upon it. But then they're like, oh, so you're saying that people should be attracted to children. No, that's not what I said. Because then they'll try to equate it to gay people, and they'll try to say, well, you're basically saying that they just are this way, and that should be allowed. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there could be that attraction there, but if they act on it, like you said, it is violating someone else's rights.
Yeah, they get that confused. That's because they think with a moral lens. It's everything's black or white. It's not that simple. I agree with you. That's like saying that someone who's a psychopath automatically kills people or should be allowed to kill people because that's who they are. No, you're not allowed. You don't have a right to go hurt people. So no, you have a right to your rights, but you don't have a right to go hurt people. So because you're then violating other people's rights. So saying someone is gay, well, someone is living their life through their own thing. As long as they do it consensual, there's nothing wrong. Now, if someone's doing it non-consensually, raping people or whatever, no matter what the gender, that is not a good thing. But it's the violation of consent that's the issue, not the being homosexual.
Absolutely.
So but people have this bizarre opinion about consent. Just like some people is thinking like some people think you can't rape your spouse. Why not? Anytime someone doesn't consent, that's right. You don't own that person.
Yes, absolutely. And then when you think about how just recent it was that it became like, okay, actually, yes, you can rape your spouse. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when you look at, things on a whole.
Oh, yeah.
And then people still want to skew consent. They still want to blur the lines and stuff. And I'm like, no, yes is yes and no is no. And sometimes if it's a forced yes, and that yes seems to be the only option, that's still not consent.
I agree.
So like in my situation, I I was molested as a child by a family member, but not an immediate family member. But that was just like a couple of times, and I really can like barely remember anything. I know it happened, but it's not something that's like super traumatizing. But the ones that were happening when I was a teenager, and this was by a non-family member, but I was a teen, and now those are traumatizing. Like I still get triggered and stuff from it, but like there were situations that I was in where, you know, he would say things like, well, you know, don't you trust me? I was terrified to say no, so of course I'm going to say yes, but like I don't mean yes. Like, you know, I don't want you to be touching me, but if I say no, I'm scared of what's going to happen if I say no. So that's still at the same time, like if you look at all the circumstances, wasn't consent. And I think I posted something on Facebook one time and somebody was like, oh, well, you can't have it both ways. Like if yes is supposed to be yes and no is supposed to be no, like, and I'm like, first of all, you cannot talk to me about this because I've been through it. I know what I'm talking about. I've been there. Absolutely, you can say yes and be screaming no on the inside, but yes was the only option at the time. So.
No, I understand. Like I said to someone before, because consent could be understood as the ability the freedom to say no. So consent is the ability or the freedom to say no. So the point when somebody can't say no, then they don't have the freedom to consent. This would include people that are passed out. If they cannot say no, they cannot give consent.
Absolutely.
If they don't understand the concept of no, they can't give consent. If they're feared and threatened into it, and they feel that it's unsafe to say no, it's not consent.
Yeah, but then you have the people who try to argue, oh, well, they didn't say no. So, I mean, like if they're passed out, oh, well, they didn't say no. And it's like, yeah, because they couldn't say no. Like, how is that even an argument?
Well, I think some people, too, that if you're said yes one time, that's universal. Like somehow, if you said to me, Damien, you could have sex with me, and then I do or don't do it, then like a week later, I think somehow I can still do it because one time you said, or a month later, or a year later, or 10 years later, well, you said it once.
Right.
You know, there's this bizarre thinking they have. Or the other thing is they'll say, well, if you said yes and I start doing it and then you change your mind and say no, but I don't have to listen to the no because I heard the yes, which is also completely wrong.
Like, and I think that's where spousal rape comes in, where like, okay.
Or date rape.
We started having sex because I was totally consenting to it, but now something has changed. I'm saying no. But just because you had that one yes doesn't mean that yes, it's going to be yes all the time.
And the people don't get that you have the right to say no at any time for any reason, period. And it has to be accepted. I know that I went one time, I started having sex with a woman, and then she said, you know, are you going to be done soon? And I said, no. And then she said, well, then I want you to stop. So I did. This is not a hard concept. Someone asked me to stop, so I did. And I've heard people go, oh, you should have just kept going. That's unfair of her. No, maybe it is unfair. But it doesn't mean that she doesn't have the right to be unfair. This thinking that somehow someone owes you something.
And something that you said was just really important, and something that I still struggle with, but the fact that we have the right to say no. And however I was raised, like, and I think also not just in the South, but just for women, period. But I think a lot of times women struggle with saying no, especially to males in society. I know that's something that I have struggled with. Like, I have this thing in my mind that's just like, okay, no, I have to agree to things. I can't, you know, like, if I say no, then I'm just being, you know, a bitch or something. I need to be docile, and I need to be just go along, like submissive. I need to go along with everything. Those are things that I'm still trying to break away from. I'm so much better at saying no now, but there are still things that I want to say no, but I don't say no. And I'm like, I've got to start getting better at that because, I really need to.
But I think also is be kind to yourself, because if you don't do something, then you can, instead of feeling bad about it, just work on it in the future. Try to do it better. But I also want to say too that I don't think there's anything wrong with people being docile if they want to be, and they don't. Some people like to get mad at other people for being submissive. But if that's who they are, and that makes them happy, then that makes them happy. I don't have to, I do not think there's one right way to be as long as you're being who you are, and you're not harming people. If that's how you are, I'm not submissive, but I mean, if someone is, that's fine. I mean, if someone is strong, fine too. I mean, it's all the same. But I do agree that it's bad when you don't want to be submissive and you are.
And that's the point that I was making there, which is I'm totally fine with people who are just like, oh yeah, I'm fine with being submissive. I like being submissive. That's okay. That's not me.
Right.
I'm not that person. But I'm talking about like forced submission when you're talking, and we can bring religion into it when you're talking about like Islam and even Christianity. I mean, you can find all kinds of examples in the Bible about how women should behave.
Right.
That's sort of what I'm talking about, which is that, like, no, you have to be submissive because you're a woman. I mean, if you want to be, that's fine. But if you're being told that you have to be because of your gender, or even like flip it to the male side, if you're told you're male, so you have to be dominant.
Right.
That's also a problem. And that's what I think sometimes people don't understand about feminism, which is it helps everybody. It's not just women. People will hear the fem part and they're like, oh, you just want to run the world and whatever. No, we're also trying to, like, it will help you too. It's not just about women. It will help males also.
Right. Well, I think that they throw in a logical fallacy because they say, well, a few women who are feminists do want to rule the world or are anti-men or whatever. Yeah. And what does that mean? Nothing. I mean, that's like saying, well, there's atheists that want to kill people. Not all atheists are humanists. Well, that's true, and that doesn't mean anything about my atheism. What is it? See, there's a difference. People don't get. There's a difference. These are philosophies. Feminism is a philosophy. Humanism is a philosophy. So the fact that someone else could hold that philosophy in a different version of that philosophy doesn't have anything to do with me. I mean, everyone who says they're a humanist doesn't all act and think the same. Well, that doesn't make me stop being a humanist. I mean, it doesn't. They don't get that. In other words, like a religion, you're following a doctrine. There's no inherent like doctrine. Like the people say, well, I'm against third wave feminism, or they're against a certain feminist. I go, all I can tell you is I've been a feminist pretty much all my life, and I agree with the main tenets of feminism. I don't get into first wave, second wave, third wave, any of that for me, because I support the main premise, so it doesn't really matter. I don't, really go into or support any certain idea other than the right thinking that I think that women should be empowered and men should be able, like you said, to be feminine or whatever. I mean, it isn't like that for me, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, speaking of being a woman, how is it being a woman in the atheist community for you? Do you feel it's any different, or do you feel that you're treated as equal as a female?
I mean, I think for the most part, I feel like I'm treated equally. I don't come across as many female atheists, like even online, as I do male atheists, and I find that interesting. And I'm sure there's all kinds of explanations for that, and we could go into a huge discussion about it. But I know mostly when I'm interacting online, I'm mostly coming across males. And they're not, like shouting down females or anything. That's not at all what I mean. They're just, I guess females are a little more scarce than the males maybe, but I still think I've been pretty well accepted.
That's good. And so we're about to wrap it up. Is there any other questions you have for me or things that you wanted to say?
No, not really. I mean, I appreciate the offer for all the resources. I mean, I'm always trying to learn new things and evolve as a person. So anything you can share with me would be great.
Yeah, I will do that.
Thank you.
All right, then. Okay.